Welcome to Recap King. In this video, we will explain Le Grand Chef. This movie tells a story of two male chefs who compete to be the heir to the last royal chef of the Joseon dynasty. Who will be the winner of the cooking competition and get the title of heir to the last royal chef of the Joseon dynasty? Let's find out in Le Grand Chef. Le Grand Chef begins by showing a flashback to 5 years ago when a cooking test using golden pufferfish was held at a most famous cooking school in South Korea named Wonam. Pufferfish are well known as one of the animals with the most deadly poison globally. Almost all pufferfish contain tetrodotoxin, making them foul-tasting and often lethal to fish. To humans, tetrodotoxin is deadly, up to 1,200 times more poisonous than cyanide. There is enough toxin in one pufferfish to kill 30 adult humans, and there is no known antidote. But, amazingly, the meat of some pufferfish is considered a delicacy. Called fugu in Japan, it is costly and only prepared by trained licensed chefs who know that one bad cut means almost certain death for a customer. Therefore, only the two most trained male students at the school could take the exam, namely Seong-Chan and Bong-ju. Whoever makes the most delicious pufferfish dish and manages to get rid of the poison, then he is entitled to become the new leader of Wonam's cooking school, replacing the current leader, a man named Mon-sig who is Bong-ju's grandfather. Seong-Chan and Bong-ju serve the pufferfish dish to Mon-sig and the rest of the judges beautifully. Seong-Chan looks confident because he feels sure that he has processed the pufferfish properly so that there is no poison left. But as it turned out, the judges started to get poisoned when they ate the pufferfish dish made by Seong-Chan, so he was deemed to have failed the exam and was expelled from the school. 5 years after the incident, a Japanese man named Fujiwara came to South Korea to return one of the inheritances from the last royal chef of the Joseon dynasty. Fujiwara explained that after the king of Joseon died, the royal chef decided to stop cooking and cut his own hands to not be forced to cook by the Japanese invaders. Fujiwara intends to atone for the sins of his ancestors and return the legendary knife to his rightful heir. Therefore, Fujiwara plans to hold a cooking competition to determine the best chef who will inherit the legendary knife from the Joseon dynasty. The scene then switches and shows a female reporter named Jin-soo visiting a remote village to meet a man who is good at cooking. The man turns out to be Seong-Chan, who lives with his grandfather, Song-hyun. After being expelled from cooking school, Seong-Chan made a living as a vegetable seller. However, he never gave up his dream of becoming a chef and continued to hone his cooking skills to be better than before. Jin-soo comes to see Seong-Chan and asks him to participate in a cooking competition held by Fujiwara. However, Seong-Chan immediately refused Jin-soo's request and said that his income as a vegetable seller was more than enough to support his daily life. As a vegetable seller, he became famous among housewives because of his handsome face and kind and polite nature. In fact, a middle-aged woman wanted to introduce Seong-Chan to her daughter and made him her son-in-law. When Seong-Chan was about to take Jin-soo home, he accidentally met Do-ki, an old friend from his school days in Wonam who now has his own restaurant. After that, Seong-Chan met a man named Woo, who asked Seong-Chan to take him to Wonam's cooking school. Seong-Chan, who finally returned to visit the place after a long time, recalled his past when he first visited the place. At that time, Seong-Chan was the most talented student and had great cooking skills. Turning to the present, Woo turns out to be ordered by Bong-ju to take Seong-Chan to meet him. Bong-ju, who is now the head of Wonam's cooking school, intends to enter a cooking competition by Fujiwara and make Seong-Chan his assistant. However, Seong-Chan then refused Bong-ju's request. When he is about to leave, Bong-ju tries to provoke him until Seong-Chan finally changes his mind and plans to enter the cooking competition to prove to Bong-ju that he is the best chef. Long story short, Seong-Chan left his village to participate in the cooking competition with the help of his friend, a man named Hyo-sung, who would act as his assistant. In the competition arena, Seong-Chan is reunited with Jin-soo, the reporter who covered the cooking competition. In the first round, all participants were required to cook dishes made from poultry. When it was time for the assessment, Seong-Chan met again with the male judge who had been poisoned by his pufferfish dish. But the judge remained professional and evaluated Seong-Chan's cooking fairly so that even Seong-Chan could advance to the next round because the dishes were so delicious. After that, Seong-Chan and Hyo-sung go back to the house and have dinner with Seong-Chan's grandfather. However, the senile Song-hyun throws his food away and says he wants to eat herring. But then, Hyo-sung's wife, who came there to look for her husband, tells Seong-Chan that Song-hyun might be referring to taro shoots because the elderly usually refer to taro shoots as herrings. The next day, when Seong-Chan heads to the cooking competition arena, he accidentally catches Bong-ju involved in a conversation with the judges. He thinks that Bong Joon might be trying to bribe the judges to win the competition. In the second round, the participants were required to make a delicious dish from pufferfish. Hearing this, Seong-Chan immediately remembered the past when he accidentally poisoned the judges with a pufferfish dish. But Hyo-sung tries to encourage Seong-Chan so that he can be more confident. With the support of his best friend, Seong-Chan is determined to make a pufferfish dish, and this time, he makes sure that the poison has been removed. The judges were reluctant to taste Seong-Chan's dish for fear of poisoning at the assessment. However, they cannot disqualify Seong-Chan if no one has tasted his cooking. Not long after, Jin-soo appears and is desperate to eat the pufferfish dish that Seong-Chan cooked in front of the judges. After the pufferfish dish was confirmed to be non-toxic, the judges ate the dish and determined that Seong-Chan had the right to advance to the next round. After the second round of competition is over, Jin-soo is seen covering the activities of the students of Woo-nam's cooking school, where Bong Joon is lecturing the students on choosing good quality ingredients and throwing away those that don't meet their standards. However, Jin-soo feels it is a waste and tries to advise Bong Joon. In the third round, the participants were required to cook dishes from beef by relying on their own creativity. Because Seong-Chan could make delicious high-flavored dishes that the judges really liked, he advanced to the semi-finals. Because in the semi-finals the participants must cook using charcoal, Seong-Chan plans to get charcoal from the best charcoal maker, a man named Han. But apparently, Han was in prison and was waiting for the execution of the death penalty. Seong-Chan and his friends then visit Han in prison and try to ask him for help, but he refuses. On the other hand, Bong Joon finds out about Han and tries to win his heart into agreeing to help him by throwing a huge prison party. However, these efforts are useless, and Han looks furious and attacks Bong Joon. Jin-soo then tells Seong-Chan that Han's mother often visits Han in prison, but he never wants to see his mother. Seong-Chan tries to approach Han's mother to learn about Han's life and past. Han's mother then told about Han, who really liked boiled sweet potatoes. After his father died, Han lived with his grandmother because his mother remarried. One day, Han visited his mother's house and found a sweet potato that was just ripe. He immediately ate it voraciously. But his stepfather caught him and scolded him for stealing. Han's mother was forced to kick Han out and asked him not to visit there anymore. However, Han's mother secretly hid the sweet potato somewhere near the tree so that Han could find it. This has been repeated for years, until one day, Han's mother moved house. Unable to find his mother's whereabouts, Han finally gave up and grew up to become the best charcoal maker. One day, Han finally managed to find the location of his mother's house. However, Han saw his mother being tortured by her husband when he visited there. Unable to control his anger, Han decided to kill his stepfather and was finally sentenced to death. Hearing the story, Seong-Chan then sent a letter to Han and a delicious sweet potato. While eating the sweet potatoes sent by Seong-Chan, Han thought back to his past eating sweet potatoes made by his mother. Han thanks Seong-Chan for getting rid of his hatred for his mother in a letter. He then told the location of trees whose trunks are perfect for making high-quality charcoal. Han and his friends then rushed to it and managed to find the tree. However, after they went to great lengths to make charcoal by following Han's directions, suddenly a man barged in and stole their charcoal. The next day at the cooking competition, Bong Joon shows the judges the charcoal, which turns out to be the charcoal made by Seong-Chan and his friends. Unable to make good quality charcoal, Seong-Chan doesn't get any points and has to admit Bong Joon's superiority. After that, the participants were challenged to slaughter the cow and cut the meat perfectly. In this round, Seong-Chan beat Bong Joon because he cut the beef with perfect incisions, separated the bone and meat properly as directed by the judges, and made it through to the final round against Bong Joon. After that, Fujiwara was seen visiting the tomb of the royal chef, who seemed abandoned because the chef was against the Japanese occupation. Jin-soo, who covers the visit, hears Fujiwara say that the royal chef had 2 trusted disciples, and one of them had poisoned him. Jin-soo then goes to Woo-nam to dig up information and finds out that the student who poisoned the royal chef was Song-hyun, who was none other than Seong-chan's grandfather. The next day, before the final round begins, the cooking competition committee tells about King Seung-jong, who went on hunger strike for his people after losing his power. The royal chef then served a special bowl of soup for the king and left. When the royal chef returned to get his bowl, it was found that the bowl was empty, and the king was seen crying after eating the soup. Therefore, the participants were required to make a special soup that once made the king cry while eating it. Bong Joon tells everyone that the royal chef had 2 students, his grandfather Mon Sig, and Seong-Chan's grandfather Song-Hyun. He then reveals that the person who poisoned the royal chef was Seong-Chan's grandfather. Everyone seemed very surprised to hear that, including Seong-Chan. Due to this surprising fact, the final round was postponed until Independence Day. Seong-Chan then returns home and tries to ask about his grandfather's past. However, the senile Seong-Chan's grandfather showed an exaggerated and angry reaction to Seong-Chan. Elsewhere, Bong-joo is visibly upset that he's failed so many times to make the royal chef's beef stew, which can make the king cry while eating it. An annoyed Bong-joo then stumbles across an old parchment that seems to be the recipe for the legendary beef stew. Meanwhile, Jin-soo manages to discover the truth behind the death of the royal chef, who ends his own life by drinking poison, and about Mon-sig's betrayal for choosing to conspire with the Japanese. Because Mon-sig sided with Japan, he was given a recipe for meat soup whose taste was very close to the Japanese tongue. The recipe was passed down from generation to generation by the general's family from Japan. Meanwhile, Song-Hyun, feeling guilty for letting his teacher kill himself, decides to leave Woo-nam behind. In fact, he is the rightful heir to the royal chef. Switching to the present, one day, Song-Hyun appears to be cooking a meat soup dish and gives his grandson a Joseon dynasty chef outfit. However, not long after, Song-Hyun passed away. The finals are held a few days later, and Seong-Chan proudly wears the chef outfit his late grandfather gave him. Seong-Chan and Bong-joo then cook a royal beef stew that is expected to match the royal chef's soup. In the last round, Fujiwara was present as a jury to assess the cuisine of the two participants. The soup dish made by Bong-joo was highly rated by the judges for its delicious taste and appetizing appearance. Meanwhile, Seong-Chan's soup dish seems to be underestimated by the judges. Seong-Chan said that the soup was his grandfather's will before he died. However, Fujiwara still ate it, and unexpectedly, he even finished it. After that, Fujiwara said that after eating Seong-Chan's soup, he finally realized why the king cried while eating the royal chef's soup. It turns out that the soup contains all the aspects possessed by the Korean nation. Namely, long-cooked beef is the grassroots of Korean democracy. Spicy pepper oil is a symbol of the burning spirit of life of the Korean nation, while the taro shoots represent a nation that does not give in to foreign powers. The soup that the royal chef cooked for the king was not ordinary, but a soup that represented the spirit of the Korean nation that will always live on. Fujiwara then remarks on Bong-joo's soup dish, which he says doesn't reflect Korean cuisine because it's a Japanese custom to use fried tofu and soy sauce in a bowl. Fujiwara says that Bong-joo's soup reminds him of a recipe passed down in his family. Therefore, Seong-Chan was determined the winner of the cooking competition, and was entitled to become the heir to the legendary knife belonging to the royal chef. After that, Woo-nam's cooking school is abandoned by the students, and Bong-joo goes bankrupt. Elsewhere, Seong-Chan returns to selling vegetables and accidentally meets Jin-soo and her mother, who turns out to be a middle-aged woman who wants him as her son-in-law. The moral that can be learned from this movie is never to commit fraud or betrayal, because these actions are not commendable and will bring us misery. In addition, never try to cook puffer fish at home if you are not a trained and licensed chef, as this is very dangerous.